Good afternoon, everybody. I know we're still waiting for a few people and we're a few minutes early, so we're going to give it just a few minutes for everybody else to get on. For those of you who may already be here, please make sure that you leave your name and property in the comment box. If you're not logged into Google or YouTube and you're not able to leave a comment in the comment box, please just make sure you send me an email to let me know that you are here. We'll also be utilizing that comment box for questions throughout the presentation and at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions now, you're welcome to add those into the comment box. Alternately, again, you can send them to me via email if you do not see the comment box as an option for you. So we're going to go ahead and get started in just a couple of minutes. Thank you all for being here. Thank you again to all of you for being here today. I see we've got a few viewers on. So if you haven't yet seen, please leave your name and property in the comment box in the comments on the side. If you're not able to do that, you can absolutely just send me an email with your name and property, letting me know that you are on the call, and I'll go ahead and take attendance for you that way. We're going to go ahead and get started in just another minute. If you have any questions, we'll also be using that comment box for questions, so you can send those requests or questions via the comment box, or you can send those via email. And the link we use to gain access to the recording or to the training today is also going to be the link you'll use to access the recording later on. So if you need to refer back to it or you'd like to share it with perhaps your general manager, if they've never seen it before, you can certainly do that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my face first. So thank you all for taking the time to be here this afternoon. I know there's some of you I've had the pleasure of meeting in person and some of you that I haven't. So now you have a face to put with the name, the emails, and the phone calls that we have. So I'll dive into our screen share in just a minute, but today's going to be pretty short. I have us booked in for an hour slot, but this intro call does not take an hour, so you're going to have a little bit of extra time back for your day today. So of course, if you have any questions, there will be ample time to answer any of those. This is the first training in a 3-training series for intro for all of our reputation champions. I'm sorry, social media champions. Training 1 is the introduction. The next training that we have will be around the platforms and tools. And then the 3rd training will be around content generation. So they get progressively more in depth as we go. If you would like to volunteer yourself or your property to be a guinea pig for either of those other trainings, you'll get a lot of great free content out of it because we'll actually use your property as an example when going through those trainings. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll go through a few slides, but most of this is going to be discussion. I'll pop back on. So if you have any questions, like I mentioned, please share them in the comment box or put them via email so that I make sure I have attendance as well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll see how this works. Woohoo! Okay, here we go. All right, so today we're going to go over our social media training introduction. This is a really great tool actually to give you some information to share with your general managers and your directors of sales and marketing to help them have a better understanding of the importance of social. So we're going to cover just an overview of social media to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what it is. We'll talk about its impact. We'll go over the process that we should be following when we go through social, and then we'll talk about some of the support options that you have available to you, as well as any questions that you might have. So again, for some of you who have been in this program for some time, a lot of this is going to be repeat for you. But for those of you, or even if you haven't taken this training before, but you've been in the program for a bit, this may be repetitive for you, but certainly worth being here anyway. And these trainings are mandatory for all of our social media champions. So first of all, we're going to talk about an overview of social media and the definition, the Merriam-Webster definition of social media. Just so you know, you don't have to commit this to memory. I will be sharing minutes after this call as well that include all of this information. So Merriam-Webster defines social media as forms of electronic communication, as websites for social networking and microblogging, through which users can create online communities to share information, ideas, personal messages, and other content. So it's interesting in that regard because some of the key points of that definition, and I'll read it back to you again, forms of electronic communication as websites for social networking and microblogging, through which users create online communities to share information, ideas, personal messages, and other content. So some of the key points of that definition that we really want to hone in on are words like communication, networking, social, community, and share. So you'll notice that none of that, in spite of the fact that most of us are in probably the sales department, none of that has anything to do with marketing or anything like that. It talks about information, ideas, personal messages, other types of content, but it never explicitly says a marketing outlet like you would see for the definition for a billboard. So the key points for social media for us is that it really is about connecting, sharing, networking, communicating. So it's not just a one-way street. This really is about building that reciprocal conversation with our guests. So that's a really important note. If you have any questions about how the hierarchy, we just talked about the social media definition, but the hierarchy for the program, I actually want to be able to flip this the other way around, because really you as social champions are at the top of this pyramid. You are the driving force behind all of the initiatives going on at your hotel. So you and any of the other social media champions at the property, whether it be somebody from the front office or human resources or the restaurant or the sales department, however many people you have that are handling social media at your property, you are the end game. You're the people who create the content, publish the content, manage the pages. So at the end of the day, it all boils down to you. Your executive committee member, and that may be your director of sales or perhaps your general manager, they're there to provide guidance and support. So when we have quarterly calls or monthly calls to discuss how things are going at the property, they may have a clear idea of what areas of our marketing or what areas of the market we need to focus on, what initiatives we have coming up, what major changes are going on at the property. And that gives us as social champions great information to be able to target, create, and publish our posts at the appropriate times. And then I'm all the way up there at the bottom of the pyramid, if we can flip it upside down, to provide support and analytics. Anytime you have any questions, you can reach out to me via email, send me a text message, give me a phone call, let me know what issues or questions you might have, and we can work through them together. And then also we'll review any analytics. So to see, analytics refers to the performance, the numeric performance of the property. So if you have any questions so far, we can go ahead and address those. I'm gonna switch back over really quickly so that I can take a quick look at any questions we have coming in. Perfect. So it doesn't look like there have been any questions that have come in so far. Oh, that's so frustrating when that does that. It doesn't look like there are any questions that have come in so far, but I'll check back on that in just a moment. So please let me know if you have any questions so far. Okay. So one of the other things that we are going to talk about here as well is the impact of social media. So there are a few really important parts of that for us to consider. And the first is that social media as a part of life. It's not even just something that we can, that's secondary. As an example, I find out what's going on with my grandmother who lives out in Denver. I found out what's going on with her through Facebook. Even when I call her, she's like, oh, I posted it, blah, blah, blah. I'm surprised you didn't notice or didn't see, because that's a way that multi-generational communication is happening. More people have a mobile device in this world than, well, a toothbrush. I mean, most of us are spending a few minutes a day brushing our teeth, but there are plenty of people in the world who are spending little to no time doing that and spending just as much time on their mobile devices. There was a Pew Research study that went out not too long ago. I believe it was Pew Research. I'll have to double check on that and send the link for the research paper in our minutes. But people on average unlock their iPhones 150 times, iPhones or smartphones. They unlock their iPhones 150 times a day. So think about how many hours you're awake in a day. Let's say you're really going crazy and you're up 15 hours. You're checking your phone 10 times an hour, which means you're checking your phone every 6 minutes or so, which is crazy to think about, that it's so pervasive in what we're doing on a daily basis. Interestingly as well is that if Facebook were a country, it would be the third largest country in the world, behind only India and China, which have the largest populations. So social media is not just something that's kind of off on the side. It's become part of our lives. Mobile devices and social communication have become a huge part of what we do on the day-to-day. It's also part of marketing. It allows us to research key demographics, provide value and meet needs, and help with purchasing decisions. People can go to Houzz, H-O-U-Z-Z, which is a sort of social media site around home decoration. People go to Pinterest to do the same. Facebook, you can ask for recommendations from your friends on Facebook for businesses you might like to go to. And 25% of search results for the world's largest brands link back to user-generated content. And user-generated content are things like reviews or photography or comments about a business. So if you're searching for Puma, the sneaker company, as an example, 25% of those search results are not going to be photos from Puma's website. They're going to be reviews from consumers. They're going to be photos from consumers. And that number is growing drastically as the years go on. Social media is also part of our guest communication, not just reputation management. Initially, when I did this training a few years ago, the focus was on reputation management, but really it's about guest services in general. In 2014, a Search Engine Land Consumer Habits said that 88% of consumers said they read reviews when making purchasing decisions. And that extends to, again, partly because 25% of content is user-generated content. A lot of that is out there. So what we help to communicate to that conversation, or what we help to contribute to that conversation, has a major impact on our potential guests and their purchasing decisions. And the expectations for reviews and feedback through social sites is much higher and faster as far as the response times that they're requesting. So even sending an email the expectation for response is not as great as if you send out a tweet. So with an email, people are expecting to be responded to within 24 to 48 hours. But with a tweet, as an example, people are expecting to be responded to within an hour or shorter. And the same is so for Facebook messaging, where people are expecting to be responded to with the same expediency as email or less, because the expectation is that, like a telephone, is always on. So we often think of it as a secondary mode of communication for our guests, but it's increasingly becoming a primary mode of communication and is much more like a phone than it is a mailbox or an email inbox. I'm going to swing back to our questions to see if any have come in. If you have any questions so far, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm just going to take a quick swing over. Welcome in, everybody from Wichita. Glad to have you on. Welcome in, Fernando from Paso del Norte. Hi, Sierra. Kendra, I hope you can hear things now. Shauna, welcome on. Thank you all for being here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on. I'd like to talk about the process for social media. So the first thing that we'll talk about is the social media process. So primarily the first thing that we're going to do is planning. So to do that, we use things like guest personas, and we'll talk about that more when we go through guest communication, or content generation. But we talk about using guest personas, which is kind of like a profile for each of our types of guests. So we might have a leisure guest, and that's one persona. We might have a business traveler guest, and that's another persona. We'll also use things like market research and strategies to determine goal and key performance indicators. So market research could be information that we're getting about travel trends within the industry. It could be information that we're seeing come through the STAR report. It could be the market research could also include things like just having an idea of what's going on in your marketplace. Are there any citywides coming in over the next few years? What businesses are opening up in the area? So those are all ways that we can see what's trending in the market and how it can contribute to our social media planning. So we also use hotel, restaurant, and national calendars to plan content in the short term. And what that means is, again, we talked about utilizing market research to have an idea of what's going on throughout the city, but we can also take a look more specifically about what's going on within the hotel. So if we know that we have a short booking window for, let's say, a theme park that's in the area, and the theme park opens up in May, we might want to start marketing that in March, because we know that we've usually got anywhere between a 3 and 8 week booking period for that. So we might want to start using those hotel calendars to have an idea of when we can do those. Also things like any dinners that we have going on within the hotel. If you do Mother's Day, or if perhaps you have tasting dinners, those are hotel calendar things that we can utilize. National calendars would be things like National Food Days, any global holidays. So it could be National Sea Turtle or International Sea Turtle Day or World Manatee Day. And those might be things that would be pertinent to our guests. So again, all of those options for us to plan content. And then we go through and we actually generate the content. So we use a content machine. We all, for the most part, our properties all utilize Nuvi and online tools to determine those content strategies. So when we come up with that content, that could be we're looking at Nuvi and seeing where our calendars kind of lay out. We might want to work with days of the week or reoccurring posts, and then we can start looking for that content. So hunting down links, hunting down photos, planning any content that we have from within the hotel. Welcome on, Lori, and welcome on, Kelly from Oaklawn. Glad to have you on. Just got that note. Okay, so then we would talk about publishing, and publishing is just that. We're writing the copy and publishing or scheduling our posts to social media channels. So both of those things, both content generation and publishing, all of that can happen on Nuvi. Our fourth step, which is reviewing analytics, so reviewing the performance of a page and post as compared to the key performance indicators or the measures that we like to follow, all of those can be done on Nuvi. So the one thing that we can't do on Nuvi is planning. A lot of that has to happen within our group, within our social media group on the property or with me. But everything else, content generation, publishing, and reviewing those analytics, all of that can happen through Nuvi. Any questions so far? I'm just going to slide over really quickly. Yogi, it appears that Yogi is having difficulty hearing. Is anybody else having a hard time with audio? I'm going to give it just a second. I know that there's a little bit of a delay. Okay, good. Phew. All right. Thank you, Yogi. I appreciate that. Okay. So there's a couple of other things that I want to talk about within content, and I'm actually going to talk to you about it instead, because I don't have slides for those. So one of the things we want to talk about is the ratio of the content that we're putting together. Now, not all of us follow this strictly, but it's a really good guideline for us to try to adhere to as much as we can. And it's a 60-30-10 ratio. So basically the 60-30-10 ratio says that 60% of our content is curated. So it can come from other sources on social media, so other pages that we might follow. It can come from links to articles, photography, videos, things that are coming from other places on the web. Yeah, so that's curated content. 60% of our content can be that. So if on any given month or week, you're posting 10 posts, of those 10, 6 of them can come from other places on the web. What I find is that a lot of our properties, because it can be a little scary to come up with your own content, rely really heavily on curated content. And there are ways that you can personalize it. So if you're using, I'll give you an example, and we'll talk about this more on Thursday when we do our content generation training, but you have the option to supplement your curated content with original stuff. So as an example, let's say I am promoting a new restaurant that I have opening up, and I don't have an executive team or an executive chef yet who has these specific recipes together, but I have a general idea of some of the dishes that we're looking to have. So we've gotten some photos from the tests that they've done in the kitchen. So that's an original piece of content. That photo of food is an original piece of content. But I don't have a recipe to share that's from our property, or perhaps I don't want to share the recipe because it's a family one. Well, I can supplement that with a curated piece of content from another part of the web. So if I have a recipe shared from Food and Wine magazine along with a photo of the dish prepared in our kitchen, that then is a nice hybrid between that curated content, but you've also got a little piece of something original coming from the property. And that's actually the next type of content that we would want to focus on, which is original content. Original content is basically just generated by the property. It can be a photo, it can be a video, it can be a blog, it can be a recipe. So any of our properties out there who are considering revamping websites or building websites or anything like that, I highly, 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 highly recommend a blog, asking for blog functionality. It's really simple to be built in. I know some of the web design companies that we work with, they custom build the templates for it, so it can be very cost intensive. So it's a good idea to try and get it on the front end if you can. And oftentimes it helps a lot with, not to get too off topic, but it helps a lot with search engine optimization, because it allows us to drive traffic to the website that's not just for room bookings or general inquiries. It could be for specific things, like have the Watermark in Baton Rouge does a really good job of this with the Gregory and Milfords, their restaurants. The restaurants you think would just post things about what's going on at the restaurant, but they actually post a lot of regionally pertinent posts, so romantic date night ideas. And of course, the restaurant is one of those romantic date night ideas, but they get a lot of traffic from it. And websites can do the same. You can have a list of some of the best places to visit in the area. So I'll get off my blog post soapbox, but it's a great example of original content. So 30% of our content should be original content. And this also includes things like sharing any job postings that you have. So tap your HR team, because that's a great way to get that. It can also be Ambassador of the Month, or really anything about our staff. I'm going to, and one other quick segue, because I've seen it come up a few times with some of our properties, and I want to make sure that I hit on this in case you're not on the content generation training. Please make sure that we're being mindful of not sharing personally identifiable information. Hopefully you know what personally identifiable information is by now, but if not, it's any combination of guest or ambassador information that would allow them to be identified on their own. So as an example, if I was just Emily, that's just my first name. There are plenty of Emilys out there. But if you share Emily Daly, that's personally identifiable information. If you're sharing my name, my last name, and my wedding date, that's personally identifiable information. If you're sharing that I'm staying at the hotel and this is the group that I'm staying with and this is my first name, that then has the potential to become personally identifiable information. So when you're sharing original content, just be mindful of the fact that we need to be cautious to adhere to any privacy standards for our guests and ambassadors. Woo! And now the fun part, which is promotional content. Promotional content is should take up about 10% if you were doing the math. 10% of the posts that we have. They can be around events. So this could be a dinner that you have coming up. It could be around promotions. So let's say the brand has double points or something like that coming up. That's promotional. And it could be for packages. So it could be a room package, a discount that you have in the restaurant. It could be any sort of thing like that. But basically the major difference between original content and promotional content is that with original content, the end goal could be to entertain, the end goal could be to engage. But with promotional content, the end goal is to get people to contact you for bookings or book something or make a reservation. There's a call to action there, and within your promotional content, the ultimate goal is to have people convert to a booking or convert to purchase something, to be a guest or customer. I'm going to swing back over to our questions page really quickly and see if we have any questions so far. So that talks about, and I'll swing back to that in just a second, but we just talked about the ratio of content for us to follow. And the last little bit is each post. So we talked about the social media process in general. We talked about the ratio of content. And then within each piece of content, and again, we'll talk about this more on Thursday, but within each piece of content, there are a few breakdowns. So the first is the copy and the content. So the copy is the words, and the content would be the video, the link, the photo, anything like that, the visual, whatever is associated with it. So that's the first part, which is the copy and content. And then the secondary part to that would be the tagging. So if you're using hashtags or at tagging a business. So for my DOSMs, if you're on the call, pay attention to this. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. I'll see you all next week. Your hashtagging is a way to mention a conversation or a particular topic. And an at tag or a mention is a way to reference a person or a page. So a metaphor that I can make for this via email would be a hashtag is kind of like the subject of your email, and an at tag is kind of like the email address you're sending it to. So an at tag is to a particular person or to a particular group, whereas a hashtag is a subject or a title, if that makes sense. So copy and content, which is our words and our pictures and all that stuff. Tagging, so if we're associating it with a conversation or sending it to a person. And then the third part, which isn't in every single post that we have, but certainly can be, is a call to action. So a call to action is exactly what it sounds like. You're asking for something. So you're asking for a like, you're asking for a comment, you're asking for a share, you're asking for somebody to click on this link to book, you're asking for somebody to do something, anything. But not all of our posts have to have it. I see a lot of our properties don't utilize calls to action. You can, I highly recommend it. You don't have to do it all the time, but it's a valuable part of that post breakdown. Any questions so far? I'm just going to take another quick look. It doesn't look like I've had any come in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. We're going to finish up this last little bit with program support. And like I mentioned, this call should be done pretty early, so you'll get a good chunk of your day back. Yay! Okay, let me just share my screen. Okay, so we talked about process. Now we'll talk about support. And the first thing that you're going to get is program training. So we, of course, have this intro training. We're also going to have a platform overview training, and we'll talk about content generation and copywriting. We also have program resources. So there are ongoing monthly social media calls. I know a lot of you are engaged with those, but those include usually a training topic and always roundtable to share any best practices or questions or difficulties that you're having. Pardon me, I'm going to take a quick sip of water. And we also have quarterly calls as well. So in addition to our monthly social media calls that include the entire portfolio, you have a call on a quarterly basis as well. So if you hadn't had one in July, please reach out to me and let me know. I'm happy to have one with you. But the next call would come up in October, and we'll start talking about the end of the year and beginning of 2018 as well. So we have ongoing monthly social media champion calls, quarterly review analytics calls for each individual property, and then as needed. Formerly it had been bi-monthly, but we don't always need bi-monthly trainings. There are also trainings that come up. So this month, in addition to this intro training or this intro packet training, this 3-set, we're also going to have Canva training. So there's going to be an introductory Canva training and advanced Canva training. And then we have a video content training coming up as well. So if you haven't seen the invites for those yet, just know that they're coming out, and they'll be coming up this month. So I'm all about training. If you ever have a question, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. Oftentimes, if it's a question you ask, it's a question that somebody else would be asking as well. So lots of opportunities for additional learning out there. Also, along with those program resources, there are always training slides and meeting minutes available. So at the end of every monthly social media call, even if you weren't able to be on it, if you've reached out to me and said, hey, Emily, I'm going to be out of the office that day, won't be able to attend the call, there are meeting minutes that are available for those meetings. The same is so for our quarterly calls. So let's say you're new to the team, but you were curious about what's gone on with the property over the last year or so. We have quarterly minutes for any of the months that we've had those quarterly calls. And you also would be getting your social platform access. So if you don't already have access to all of your social media platforms, please reach out and let me know if you still need to acquire any of that. You'll be getting access to Nuvi as well. Some of your properties will have a generic login for Nuvi, but there is a new process for that where they are set up individually based on email address. So if you don't have access to Nuvi yet, please reach out and let me know. I will provide you either with your generic login, or I will send you an email invite to the platform. Okay. We also, as we go through the year, there are certain periods of time where we'll go together as a group, brand voice documentation as well as guest personas. So most of our properties have had guest personas set up at some point. We talked about those earlier. Those are basically a profile for each type of guest that we have at the hotel. I'm working on redoing those so that they're a little bit more simplified. So if you haven't taken a look at guest personas and would like to start setting them up, we can certainly do that. And then there are always how-to guides available as well. So if you're having a tough time getting through something and it's not something that warrants a full training, oftentimes I'll put together a quick how-to documentation for it, or put screenshots together to take you through the process, or do a quick screen share. Okay, so that goes over program training as well as program resources, and then we also have ongoing support, and that of course again primarily comes from your executive team members. So whether it be your director of sales or your general manager, your front office manager, your operations manager, your HR manager, the primary support that you're getting should be coming from your property. They can potentially be involved in those monthly social media calls that we have for the entire portfolio, but they may not be, and that's okay as well. And that's that for support. What questions? Any questions that anybody has? I'm gonna stop sharing and show you my face again. Not seeing any questions come in, but there is usually a little delay there, so. Okay, let me just take a quick look. I'm taking a quick look in my email to see if there were any that came through. Michael, I see that you're on. Thank you for joining us. I understand you're having difficulties with the chat box. That's certainly fine. Kendra, I got your side note about military packages, so we can talk about promoting those. But were there any other questions? I'm going to give it just another couple of minutes because there is a delay. Not seeing any questions come in. I'll give it just another minute. Okay. Well then, if there are no additional questions, thank you all for taking the time to be here today. We have another training tomorrow at the same time, same bat place, same bat channel, 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that, again, will be a platform review. So we'll go over all of the major social media channels, and we'll dive a little bit more into the ones that most of our properties utilize. So we'll talk about Facebook, of course, which is a big one, Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, Instagram. I think those will be the big 4. Some of our properties utilize Twitter, but not as effectively as it could be used. So I don't think I'll dive too much into the functionality of that channel, but we will review Facebook, Instagram, Google+, and LinkedIn. So, and then the following day on Thursday at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will review content generation. So again, if you weren't on the call earlier, I know we had a couple other people join on. If you'd like to donate your hotel for that content generation call, we'll actually go through the process of creating content together. So if you'd like to donate your property, you'll be getting a lot of free content out of it. So there's some good incentive there. Save yourself some work later on this month and later on this quarter, and we'll come up with some content together. Okay, well, if that's all and there are no other questions, I'm going to give it one last check. Is there any change with Expion no longer allowed? No, there isn't. If your property was utilizing Expion, and Yogi, you may have been one of the only properties that had looked at that. But no, because most of our properties have been utilizing Nuvi, there won't be any changes for us. And because, again, most of our properties never engaged with Expion to begin with, there was no, Expion didn't have access to our Facebook pages. So I know a lot of you are getting reminders from Hilton about Expion ending and how there's all this other stuff you have to do. We weren't engaging with it completely anyway, so it won't impact us at all for the most part. But Yogi, if you... Nuvi, I don't believe that Nuvi will be available via mobile. I'm going to follow up with them about that, though. Yeah, so I'll follow up with Emily Clark about Nuvi being available on mobile. That would be amazing. I tend to think it might not be, only because the best platform for it is Google Chrome, and I don't know how well that translates over to mobile because it's such a large suite. But I'll follow up with her and make sure that if it isn't in their feature request list for us yet, that it is. Yeah, and then yes, so if you did have Expion on your Facebook page, the only thing you'll have to go in and do is make sure that they no longer have admin access. And then other than that, you should be all set. Okay, anything else? Any other questions, comments, thoughts, reflections? All right, in that case, again, the link that we saw in the training today is the same. As soon as this is done, it will be processed and automatically posted as a recording. So any of your team members who were not able to be on this call this afternoon can refer back to it at any time. If you have new social media champions that come on board and they haven't gone through the training yet, they can use those links to access and view the training. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. And thank you all. I'll see my DOSMs and my GMs next week. So thank you all. Have a beautiful day.